The early phases of my career, and I would talk mostly after I became professional. When I was a recreational, I was just getting information from all over the place. But in the beginning of my career, I studied mostly from Run It Once videos and forums. So it was a very frequent grinder of the forums, posting hands and trying to get feedback from other people, posting poker journals, and then also watching tons of videos. And during that time, I got a lot of free elite membership on it once because of how much I posted and how many likes my post got. So they had this promotion where the top five people with most likes would get free elite membership. So I got that several times, and I would just grind the videos, watch a lot of videos, and that's how I studied during the, let's say, first year mostly of my career. And then right after where when I moved up to 25 NL, I already bought PO solver. So I started grinding solvers very early in my career. So I was still a very small winner at 25 NL, and then I bought PO solver and started grinding really seriously. So from the very beginning of my career, I was already studying heavily with solvers, running sims, studying aggregated reports, studying range explorer and all that stuff. And then briefly after that, I started also studying MDA. So as I said, I used to be a frequent grinder of Run It Once. And during that time, 2016, 2017, there was a poker coach, Nick Howard, who was posting a lot about studying population tendencies and all that stuff. And I got really interested in that. I was able to get some of his courses for free. And then I really started digging deep on MDA population tendencies. And that was mostly with my friend, my partner today in my company, Zinhão, which was also a Brazilian cash game reg. And we started studying together, and we went really deep with the MDA stuff. And after that, I just basically continued studying with him, and then also on my own and mixing GTO with MDA. So from 2017 forward, my focus has been study population tendencies, but also getting better at theoretical understanding. And that's how I spend my time even to this day. So I could talk about this for hours. I feel like I don't think there's like one specific difference. There are many differences. One thing that I have seen in my staking company, like we have 200 players at the moment, and we have probably had about 250 players with us since we began. And I can see a very clear difference between the very big crushers and maybe the small winners, the guys that are struggling, all that stuff. Like the guys that crush or that make the most money, those are people that are willing to take the most risks. These people, these guys, they're not afraid to make mistakes. They are comfortable with risk, and a lot of times they search for more risk. So how to make riskier plays, how to play bigger pots, how to put more pressure into my opponents. So I see this clear distinction where the guys that struggle, the guys that maybe have a very gradual progression, are mostly people who are more maybe a little bit too perfectionist. Like they don't try to apply stuff until they're really certain about it. They're maybe a little bit more risk averse than the others, so they get too skeptical about running huge bluffs or making big call downs. So these people, they can still develop. I'm not saying that they don't, but they take a longer time because it's almost, it feels like they are restrained, like they're trapped and they can't step out of that box they put themselves in. So it's really hard for them to take too many risks or to maybe apply things that they still don't understand 100% or that they still don't feel 100% confident about it. While this other group, like they can really go for these more riskier plays because they don't care if they make a mistake. They're gonna go back the other day and they're gonna try to be better. They're gonna ask questions. They're going to try and learn. So I feel like this attitude of being more, let's say, have an appetite for risk, I think is one of the major factors that contributes to growth. There are different areas that we can talk about. We can talk about the strategical areas, so basically just focus strategy. We can talk about the logistical area, which is game selection, grinding hours, routine. And then we can talk about the mental health area, or mental game area. I think all of these three different areas, there are going to be a lot of different opportunities for generating leaks and also for having leaks. And I would say that in the strategical part, what most people are always going to exhibit is a difficulty bluff catching sufficiently relative to solver. That's one thing that almost everyone struggles with, to put in enough calls on the river. Another thing is having sufficiently good heuristics for playing depolarized ranges. That's something that I see almost everyone still struggles with. Everyone still polarizes their ranges a little bit too much. Let that be on the flop or on the turn on the river. I mean, I definitely think there are many things one can do to improve in that area. Inside Metagame, we have two psychologists working with our players. It's not a mandatory thing for players to do, but if they wish to have psychological support and have sessions every week, we share the costs with them, so the player doesn't have to spend too much. And we consider that as a great investment, because once the player has psychological support, then he's going to perform best, he's going to perform better, and we're both going to win. So since it's a business model where we share the profits, the more we can do to help the players achieve better performance, we're ready to do so. That's why we do that. And this psychological support is extremely important, because most people playing poker are basically male that are young. So people in their 20s, maybe in their early 30s. Of course, there are some exceptions, people that that are of older age, but most people are single guys in their 20s and their early 30s. And there's a lot of stuff that we need to figure out in life apart from poker, and all this other stuff in life can get in the way of performing consistently in poker. So having people more experienced, having the support is extremely important. And we found that the guys inside our team that have the psychological support, they tend to perform best. And apart from that, I would say you have to take care of your mental health. So what a lot of poker players do, and what I did in the beginning of my career, is that you get so obsessed with poker that you just study and you grind and you work like 12, 13 hours a day, and all you can think about is poker. And this can have some prejudicial consequences to your performance. Like sometimes we can justify isolating yourselves, and then our social life, gets diminished. And then we can also justify not exercising, not going to the gym, because we need to study more, because we need to grind more. And all of these things, they can pound over the short and medium term, to the point where maybe in a year you're going to feel like you can't stand the grind anymore. And then if you have a downswing, you may consider quitting poker. I've had this case inside my staking company where there was a guy, was a Norwegian guy, and he started with us at 200 NL. By the end of the contract, he made $200,000 with us. It was a 18-month contract. He started at 200 NL and ended the contract playing 1K NL. But at some point during that contract, it was an 18-month period, I think he spent like maybe 4 to 6 months without winning, and he actually considered quitting poker for good. And I always remembered that case, because take a look at this guy. He made $200,000 in 1.5 years, and at some point, because he was breaking even for 6 months, he actually considered quitting poker for good, because he couldn't stand the variance any longer. So this is huge. Like if you don't take care of your mental health, for example, if you don't have your financial life set together and really, really taken care of, you can eventually burn out so much from the game that you maybe quit, or maybe you take so much to recover. So taking extreme good care of your mental health, your financial life, all this stuff, to me, is extremely important to perform well at the tables. I think this is very personal, and it depends on a few factors. But one thing that I always say is that improving, getting better, moving up in stakes is much easier when you have someone else more experienced helping you. So in poker, especially in the foreign community here in Brazil, we have more this culture of getting help. But it seems to me, at least from the experience I've had, that people in Europe, for example, they can be a little bit reluctant to get coaching or to get into a CFP and all that stuff. And yes, it's totally possible to do everything on your own and to move up in stakes on your own. But I feel like you can accelerate your progress so much by having someone more experienced looking into your game and helping you, avoid the mistakes that are very common for someone in your phase. So I would say at least getting some kind of feedback in your game. It doesn't have to be a coach. It could be just a friend or someone that plays higher stakes than you. Let's just like interacting with other people. Don't try to do everything on your own, just staring at a computer screen, browsing solver sims. Just try to get feedback, exchange ideas with other people. Like two of the major aha moments I've had in my career came from exchanging ideas with other regs and other people that I respected. So I would say most important thing is to exchange ideas with other people. And if you have the money to invest on private coaching or getting into SFP, I would say that's definitely a very, very good way of accelerating your growth. But if you're a person, maybe you're still not prepared for it, maybe you still think that you should do most things on your own, maybe do that, maybe try it out. I think we go through phases in our lives that we have to do things with our own hands to realize what is good or bad. If I come to you and say, this path is better, maybe you're not going to listen to me. You're going to have to test whether that path is better or not. Maybe you're going to have to test other alternatives so that you can see with your own eyes. So I always say, follow your intuition, do what you feel is best at this given moment, but be open-minded. Be open-minded to try out new paths if the one you're taking right now is not working. So I think that's the most important thing. It's really exciting. I'm a super nerd about that. I love to talk about that subject and how AI is already changing our lives. Like I've seen a some news into some website these days that people have been using ChatGPT as their therapist. And I was like, oh my god, that's crazy. But this thing is evolving super fast, and in poker, we've seen plenty of tools already in the market. And initially, I don't think that it's going to change much in terms of the profitability of the games and all that stuff. I think that we're still in a very advanced phase. We're already in a very advanced phase of the industry where everyone is studying GTO and all that stuff. What I think is going to be impacted very immediately are the training services. So training services, poker coaches, mostly the mediocre training services and poker coaches are probably going to run out of business because AI is going to just be much better than them. So maybe in a few months or maybe in a year from now, you can just open up your browser, enter your AI tool, and this AI can answer your questions about how to play the spot better, how to play that spot better. And this AI will probably it will probably give better answers than the mediocre coach that you were having maybe a few months prior. So I think the training industry, the coaching industry is going to have an impact. But as far as profitability of the games go, I don't see it being impacted so much in the short term, at least. I think the sites are going to have to spend more money into security and preventing the games from having bots and all that stuff. But they have been doing this already for the last several years. So I think the big players like PokerStars, GG Poker, all these guys, they are already prepared for this. So I think the biggest impact we're going to see are going to be in the training services and the coaching services. Awesome. So coincidentally, I also gave another interview yesterday to Andrew Brokos to his Thinking Poker podcast. And this exact same answer came up. And this is a subject that I love talking about. And it's something I don't quite understand why the poker industry doesn't look more into it. We literally live in the era of data. We live in the era of information, of analytics, of big data, and every single industry in the entire world uses data to improve their performance, to increase profitability, to to make better products. So if we're talking about, for example, high sports of high performance like football, basketball, all of these sports, all the clubs have They have employees looking into data and statistics to figure out what's the best strategy that I can use. What's the best strategy against this team or this particular player of this opponent team? What's their behavior? How do they play? What's their success rate with this move, with that move? And then if you go to marketing, social media, every single company uses the behavior data on the behavior of people to choose marketing campaigns. So what's the price of my product? Should I sell to this demographic or to that demographic? Or what's the behavior of this demographic? Do they buy this type of thing that I'm willing to sell, or do they buy this other type of thing? And when do they mostly buy these things? So like getting into human behavior and gathering data to exploit the human behavior in any industry is the standard nowadays. But in poker, we don't see that. We see like everyone obsessed with GTO strategies and learning solvers and learning mixed strategies. And don't get me wrong, like I love that. I'm a big GTO nerd. I love talking about solvers, and I think one of the greatest qualities that I have is my capacity to understand equilibrium and to teach this information to other people. However, I feel like closing your eyes to the fact that people don't behave like solvers is a huge mistake. So we have a lot of data on solvers and GTO strategies nowadays. And it's very clear, at least if you play professionally, it's going to be very clear to you that no one is playing exactly like that. Yes, we have gotten much better. And I would say for pre-flop and flop, we are really good at executing relatively balanced strategies. But from the turn forward, everyone is making huge mistakes. So why are we going to close our eyes to the existence of potential exploits, to the fact that people are deviating from theory and that we can exploit them? And if you take a look at how poker has been played before this era, people already had an intuition of theory. That's true. But most of what would generate edge is the capacity to outplay other people, to figure out what other people are doing and then be one step ahead of them. And I feel like we went too far with it in the poker community. We just got obsessed with solvers and mixed strategies and balanced strategies, and we kind of forgot that we're playing against humans. Like if you sit in your computer and you play online, the avatar that you're seeing on your table, it's a real person. There is someone on the other side playing the game, and you can try to outplay that person. You can try to deceive them, to play strategies that are going to force them into making mistakes. So I think that for whatever reason, we just forgot that in general as a community. And I think that if we can take a step back, it will not only make poker more profitable for the professionals, it would also make it more fun. It's much more fun to try to outplay other people rather than just try to replicate solver strategy and be obsessed with randomizing and all that stuff. At least that's my opinion. Cool. So that's also a major topic that I feel is completely forgotten by professionals. Most professionals, just as I said, are obsessed with GTO strategies. When they're thinking about GTO strategies, they're thinking about how to play against other regs. And well, to me, that's counterproductive. At least if you only do that, that is counterproductive in my opinion, because most of your winnings are gonna come from the recreational players. So if you can learn how to exploit them, that's the best thing you can do for your career. Now, the way I do it is gathering data. So gathering lots of hands to understand the recreational player behavior. Then I compared that to solver. And then I try to take that information and then make a model inside a solver. So there's the node lock function that probably most viewers are going to be familiar with, where you can adjust the solver strategy. You can input a certain assumption of how that player is playing their ranges, and then you can let the solver recalculate its strategies. I think that's the best way to find counter exploits against population, particularly recreationals. And then you just go ahead and apply those max exploit strategies. And in terms of figuring out recreationals, understanding the player profiles, there's a lot of work you can do with bias theorem. So I've published a video in my channel where I talk a little bit about that in a funny way, where you have to update your beliefs about how your opponent is playing based on the evidence you see. So in my video, I calculated how you can upgrade your belief of a random person at your table being a recreational from 20%, So 1 out of 5 at your table are going to be a fish, to 72% just because you saw the guy cold calling from the cutoff. So regulars only cold call from the cutoff about 2% of the time, and recreationals cold call 21%. So it's much more likely that it is a recreational when you see them cold calling from the cutoff. And there are many other signals that you can take that are going to be very significant evidence of recreational behavior. For example, 3x open from the button. It's a sizing that is very, very infrequently used by professionals, and it's very, very often used by recreationals. You can already assign high probability of a recreational just from seeing a 3x from the button. Small 3-bet size is out of position. Almost all regs 3-bet bigger than 10 big blinds out of position, and fishes actually 3-bet lower than that. They 3-bet to 7 blinds, 8 blinds, 9 blinds. That's very high probability of recreational player. You have, for example, half pot sizing post flop. Regulars don't tend to use half pot size very often. They use mostly 1/3 and then 3/4. And recreationals love to use half pots. So that's also very high probability of recreational player. So if you combine all these evidences, you can very quickly have 100% certainty of your player profile of your opponent without ever having played with them before. And I think this is severely neglected by most professionals. I have students that they come to me showing a hand, and because of 2 things that the opponent did, I'm 100% sure that the guy is recreational, and they play the hand as if the guy was a professional. Like, that's a major league. If you play against a recreational as you would play against another reg, you're leaving tons and tons of money at the table, and it seems like people don't know how to do that. They don't know how to figure that out. So I think this is a very, very important skill, particularly when you're playing big pools where you're going to have hundreds of opponents, different opponents every day. You have to master that skill to be able to adjust your ranges and adjust your strategies according to the players you're playing against.